"Do not call this a sacrifice," the Alpha King said, his voice cutting through the silent Frostvale Hall. "You are offering an innocent woman because you were too afraid to protect her." The entire pack froze. Clara Whitmore stood alone at the center of the chamber, wearing a simple gray cloak that suddenly felt heavier than armor. For years, she had healed their injured wolves, cared for their elders, and mixed remedies for their families. But tonight, every person she had helped looked away. The Frostvale pack had made its decision. Clara, an Omega with no powerful family name and no place among the ruling circles, would be sent to the abyss. Not because she had done anything wrong, because the council believed she was the only one who could stop an ancient threat hidden beneath their lands. Clara looked at the faces around her and realized something painful. She had spent her entire life trying to prove she belonged to a pack that had already decided she never would. Lord Everett Blackthorn, the elder who led the ceremony, stepped forward with a calm expression. "Clara Whitmore, you understand the responsibility placed upon you." Clara gave a small, almost tired smile. "Responsibility? Is that what we are calling it now?" The room grew colder. "A few hours ago, I was the Omega you trusted when your children were sick. I was the healer you called when your wolves could not rest. But now that you need someone to blame, I suddenly became the easiest choice." No one answered, because everyone knew she was right. Then the ancient doors of the hall opened. A wave of unfamiliar alpha energy moved through the room, powerful enough to make every conversation disappear. The guard stepped aside as a man entered wearing a black coat marked with silver symbols of the Obsidian Kingdom. Damian Veilcrest, the Obsidian King, the most feared alpha leader in the Northern Territories, the man who had never entered another pack's territory without a reason. His gray eyes moved across the room before stopping on Clara, and something inside him changed. His wolf, Nyx, went completely still. For the first time in years, the beast within him did not demand control. It recognized someone. Clara felt it too. A strange warmth passed through the air between them, like a forgotten promise waking after a long silence. She had heard stories about mate bonds. Most were legends told beside fireplaces. Stories of two wolves finding the one person who could see beyond their title and their power. But Clara never expected to feel one standing in front of the man who ruled the Obsidian Kingdom. Damian looked at the council. "You were going to send her into the abyss alone?" Lord Blackthorn lifted his chin. "This is a matter of pack law, Your Majesty." Damian's expression remained calm, but his voice carried a warning. "A law that requires the innocent to suffer is not justice." Clara studied him carefully. She expected another powerful alpha who believed he owned every room he entered. Instead, she saw something else. A man carrying the weight of an entire kingdom on his shoulders. A king who looked just as trapped as she felt. Damian stepped closer, but stopped before crossing the line of respect. "Tell me your name." Clara raised her eyes. "Clara Whitmore." A quiet breath escaped him, almost like his wolf had already known. "Clara," Damian said softly, "you are not going to the abyss because this pack decided you were disposable." The hall fell silent. "Because tonight, everyone here will learn the difference between sacrifice and betrayal." The moment Damian Veilcrest spoke, the entire Frostvale Hall seemed to forget how to breathe. Clara Whitmore had expected anger, judgment, maybe even another speech about duty. She had not expected the Obsidian King to stand between her and the fate her own pack had chosen for her. Lord Everett Blackthorn stared at Damian with a controlled expression, the kind powerful people wore when they were trying not to reveal they had lost control of the room. "Your Majesty, this matter does not concern the Obsidian Kingdom," he said. Damian did not look away. "The moment you decided to use an innocent Omega as a solution to your problem, it became everyone's concern." A quiet murmur moved through the pack. No one spoke to the council like that, not even other alpha leaders. Clara watched Damian carefully. She still did not know if she could trust him. A powerful alpha stepping in did not automatically mean he was different from the others. She had learned that promises sounded beautiful right before people broke them. "Why are you doing this?" Clara asked. Her voice was calm, but everyone heard the question. "You do not know me." Damian turned toward her. For a second, the cold expression of the Obsidian King disappeared. "You are right. I do not." His voice lowered slightly. "But I know what it looks like when a person is being used because everyone else is too afraid to face the real problem." Those words hit harder than Clara expected, because that was exactly what had happened. The pack had not chosen her because she was strong. They had chosen her because they believed no one would fight for her. Damien looked back at the council. The abyss is not demanding a sacrifice. Something beneath your territory is unstable, and you are hiding the truth behind an old tradition. Lord Blackthorn's eyes narrowed. Be careful, Your Majesty. Accusing a pack council without proof can create unnecessary tension. Damien gave a small, humorless smile. I did not accuse you. I said I would find the truth. The difference was clear. He was not threatening them. He was promising that he would not stop. Outside the hall, the night air was cold and quiet. Clara walked beside Damien through the stone courtyard while guards followed several steps behind. She noticed something strange. The legendary Obsidian King, the man entire territories feared, looked exhausted. Not weak, not uncertain, just tired in a way that came from carrying too much for too long. You should not have challenged an entire pack council for me, Clara said. Damien glanced at her. Why? Because I am not important enough. The words came out before she could stop them. Damien stopped walking. Who told you that? Clara looked down. Everyone. For a moment, the only sound was the wind moving through the trees. Then Damien said quietly, everyone can be wrong. Something inside Clara shifted. Not because he saved her, because he believed her. As they continued toward the obsidian carriage waiting beyond the gates, Nyx stirred within Damien again. The wolf was certain. Clara was the bond he had spent years avoiding. But Damien was not ready to accept what fate had placed in front of him. A queen could not simply appear because a bond existed. A kingdom could not be ruled by emotion alone. And yet, when Clara walked beside him, Damien realized the most dangerous thing was not losing control of his wolf. It was the possibility that he had finally found someone worth changing for. The journey to the Obsidian Kingdom took 2 days, but Clara Whitmore felt like she was entering a world she had only heard about in stories. The Frostvale Pack had always told her that powerful alphas were distant, impossible to understand, and dangerous to challenge. But the man riding beside her was not what she expected. Damien Veilcrest spent most of the trip reading reports, studying maps, and answering messages from his council. The weight of leadership followed him everywhere. Even when he was silent, Clara could see it. Every decision belonged to him. Every mistake would belong to him too. You look like you are trying to solve a problem that does not exist yet, Clara said as they stopped near a small mountain rest station. Damien looked up from the papers in his hand. That is usually when problems become the most expensive. Clara almost smiled. You know, for someone called the most intimidating alpha in the north, you spend a lot of time worrying. Damien raised an eyebrow. You think I worry? I think you prepare for every possible disaster because you believe if you plan enough, no one will get hurt. For a moment, Damien said nothing. Most people avoided speaking to him that directly. Clara noticed the change immediately. His expression stayed controlled, but something behind his eyes softened. You notice too much, he said. It is part of being a healer. Clara looked toward the mountains. People and wolves are not that different. They both tell you when something is wrong. Most people just stop listening. Inside Damien, Nyx reacted to her words. The wolf had been unusually calm around Clara, but now it pressed closer, almost agreeing with her. Damien noticed. He always noticed. That was the problem. For years, he had controlled every instinct, every emotion, every reaction. A king who showed weakness invited challenges. A king who followed feelings risked his kingdom. But Clara made control feel harder than honesty. When they finally reached the Obsidian Kingdom, Clara expected a fortress built only from stone and power. Instead, she found something unexpected. The kingdom was disciplined, but it was alive. Wolves moved freely through the outer grounds. Healers worked beside guards. Children ran through the courtyard without fear. It was different from Frostvale. Here, strength did not mean everyone had to be afraid. Damien noticed her looking around. You seem surprised. Clara nodded. I expected something colder. The name gives that impression. She glanced at him. The Obsidian King. Damien looked away. A name created by people who only saw the armor. That answer stayed with her. Later that evening, Damien brought Clara to a private chamber where ancient records were kept. He did not hide the reason. I need to know why Frostvale chose you. Clara touched the old documents carefully. You think there is more to the story. I know there is. She looked at him. Because you do not believe they would sacrifice someone innocent? Damien paused. Because I know what it feels like when people decide your purpose before they know you. That was the first time Clara saw beyond the crown. Not the Alpha King. Not the ruler. Just Damien. A man who had spent years being needed but rarely understood. Before she could answer, a strange feeling passed between them. Her breath caught. Damien felt it too. The mate bond. Stronger than before. Not a command. Not a chain. Something quieter. Something that asked them to trust each other. Damien stepped back first. We need answers before we make decisions. Clara nodded, even though she felt the distance. She understood. The bond might connect their wolves, but trust had to be earned by their hearts. Neither of them noticed the shadow moving outside the chamber door. Someone inside the kingdom had already learned that Clara Whitmore was not a forgotten Omega anymore, and they were afraid of what she might become. Clara Whitmore had spent her entire life learning how to listen. She listened to injured wolves when they could not explain their pain. She listened to frightened pack members who had no one else to trust. She listened to the quiet things people revealed when they thought nobody was paying attention. But standing inside the Obsidian Kingdom's ancient archive, she realized there was one thing she had never learned to hear. The truth hidden behind a crown. The old records filled the chamber from floor to ceiling. Hundreds of years of alpha laws, pack agreements, and forgotten traditions rested inside those walls. Damien Veilcrest stood across from her, studying a collection of documents that had been sealed for decades. The Abyss ceremony was changed, Clara said quietly. Damien looked up. You are certain? Clara ran her fingers over the faded writing. Her healer ability did not just recognize wounds. It allowed her to sense what emotions remained attached to objects. Fear, desperation, betrayal. The paper carried all three. This record was rewritten by someone who wanted the pack to believe the sacrifice was necessary. Damien stepped closer. Can you tell who changed it? Clara shook her head. Not yet. But whoever did it knew exactly what they were doing. Damien looked toward the window overlooking the kingdom. Someone inside Frostvale created a false tradition to remove you. Clara noticed the tension in his shoulders. The Obsidian King was calm, but she could feel the anger he refused to show. Not the anger of a ruler protecting his reputation. The anger of someone who hated seeing innocent people used. Why does this matter so much to you? Clara asked. Damien turned back. Because I know what happens when a person becomes a symbol instead of a person. His voice was quieter now. Before I became king, I watched my father sacrifice relationships, friendships, and trust because he believed leadership required isolation. I promised myself I would never become that. Clara studied him. And did you keep that promise? Damien gave a small, almost humorless smile. Ask my council. They would probably say I became worse. For the first time, Clara laughed. It was a small sound, but it surprised him. Damien looked at her, as if he had forgotten what it sounded like to hear someone laugh without fear. The moment disappeared when Nyx suddenly reacted inside him. The wolf sensed something nearby. Not a threat. A memory. Clara noticed the change. Your wolf knows something. Damien looked away. Nyx remembers things I try to forget. Maybe that is because some memories are not meant to be buried. Those words stayed with him. Later that night, Damien showed Clara the private training grounds beneath the castle. Unlike the public areas, this place was quiet. No advisors. No counsel. No expectations. Just a place where he could exist without the weight of the crown. You come here when everything becomes too much, Clara said. Damien nodded. A king is expected to have answers. Sometimes I only have choices between difficult ones. Clara looked at him. Then maybe you do not need someone who thinks you are perfect. Maybe you need someone who reminds you that you are still a person. Damien held her gaze longer than he intended. The mate bond between them grew stronger, but neither of them moved closer. They both understood something important. A bond could bring two wolves together, but it could not force two people to trust. Before the night ended, a messenger arrived with urgent news from Frostvale. The council had discovered Clara was still alive. Worse, they claimed the Obsidian King had stolen a dangerous Omega from their pack. Damien read the message silently. Clara watched his expression change. They are afraid, she said. Damien folded the letter. Yes. Because I survived? Damien looked at her. No, his voice was steady. Because they know you were never the weakness they believed you were. Outside the castle walls, the pack politics had already begun. And this time, Clara Whitmore was no longer standing alone. The news from Frostvale spread faster than anyone expected. By sunrise, every corner of the Obsidian Kingdom knew the same story. The Omega they abandoned had been found alive. The Alpha King had taken her under his protection. And now, the pack that once ignored Clara Whitmore was demanding answers. Clara stood in the Grand Council chamber of the Obsidian Castle, surrounded by leaders who had spent years making decisions from behind polished wooden tables. She recognized the look in their eyes. Some were curious, some were suspicious, and some were already deciding what they wanted to believe. Damien Veilcrest stood at the front of the room, silent and steady. He did not look like a man waiting for approval. He looked like a king preparing to carry the consequences of his choices. The Frostvale Council has requested the return of Clara Whitmore, one advisor said. They claim she belongs to their pack. Clara felt the words more than she expected. Belongs. As if she were an object that could be transferred between powerful people. Damien noticed her expression change. Clara does not belong to anyone, he said immediately. The room went quiet. The advisor lowered his gaze. Your Majesty, the pack laws exist to protect people, Damien interrupted. Not to give leaders permission to discard them. Clara looked at him. It was the first time she had seen him openly challenge his own counsel for her. Not because of the mate bond. Not because of politics. Because he believed it was right. But she also understood the danger. Damien, she said softly, if you make me your enemy's problem, they will use me to attack you. The room became even quieter. She had called him by his name. Not your Majesty. Not Alpha King. Just Damien. His eyes moved to her, and for a moment the entire council disappeared. You think I should send you away? He asked. Clara took a breath. I think you should not choose me because you feel responsible for saving me. That surprised him. You are not a burden, Damien said. Clara held his gaze. Then do not treat me like one. The words stayed in the chamber. Even the advisors who disagreed could not ignore them. Damien had spent his life surrounded by people who either feared him or wanted something from him. Clara was the first person who challenged him without trying to gain power. Later that afternoon, Clara walked through the royal gardens with Nyx following nearby in wolf form. The massive black wolf had become strangely comfortable around her, despite his usual pride. She smiled slightly. You know your king is terrible at admitting when he needs help. Nyx looked at her with complete seriousness. She almost laughed. Yes, I know you agree. When Damien found them, he stopped for a moment. Seeing Clara beside his wolf felt natural in a way that frightened him. Not because it was wrong, because it felt right. The council will hold a public hearing in 3 days, Damien said. Clara's expression changed. About me? About the decision I made to protect you. She understood immediately. This was no longer only about Frostvale. It was about whether the Obsidian Kingdom believed its king had acted with wisdom or emotion. That night, Clara returned to the archive to continue searching the old records. She found something hidden inside a forgotten document. A symbol. The same mark that appeared beside the original Abyss ceremony. But this time, it carried another name. A name she recognized. Someone from inside the Obsidian court. Clara closed the document slowly. The betrayal was not finished. It had only moved closer. The hidden mark inside the ancient document changed everything. Clara Whitmore had expected enemies outside the castle walls. She had expected Frostvale leaders to fight against her. What she did not expect was to find proof that someone inside the Obsidian Kingdom had helped create the lie that nearly destroyed her life. She carried the document straight to Damien Veilcrest. He was in the war room, surrounded by maps, reports, and advisors preparing for the upcoming public hearing. The moment he saw Clara's expression, he knew something was wrong. What happened? Damien asked. Clara placed the document on the table. I found the person connected to the false Abyss ceremony. The room went silent. Damien looked down at the symbol. His expression changed slightly. It was only for a second, but Clara noticed. She always noticed. You recognize it, she said. Damien did not answer immediately. That was enough of an answer. Damien. His jaw tightened. The symbol belonged to an old royal faction. A faction inside your kingdom? Yes. Clara felt the weight of that information. The betrayal was no longer just about Frostvale. Someone had manipulated 2 packs against each other. Someone wanted chaos. Why did you not tell me there were people here who wanted to use me? She asked. Damien looked at her, and for the first time, his usual confidence disappeared. Because I was trying to protect you. Clara shook her head gently. That is what everyone says before they make decisions for someone else. The words hit harder than she intended. Damien looked away. Because she was right. He had spent his entire life protecting people by keeping information away from them. It was how kings survived. But Clara was not asking him to protect her like a fragile thing. She was asking him to trust her. You are right, Damien finally said. I should have told you. Clara did not expect an apology, especially not from an Alpha King. But he gave one. Simple. Honest. I am sorry. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The mate bond between them felt stronger, but it was no longer the only thing connecting them. Something else was forming. Trust. Later that evening, Damien called a private meeting with his closest advisors. He did not hide Clara from the conversation. He placed her beside him, not behind him. Some advisors noticed. Some disapproved. But Damien did not move her away. The hearing is not about whether Clara belongs here, Damien said. It is about whether our kingdom will continue allowing old traditions to be used as excuses for cruelty. One advisor stepped forward. Your Majesty, many will say you are allowing personal feelings to influence your judgment. Damien looked calm. Then they should watch carefully. Because my decision is based on truth, not emotion. Clara realized something in that moment. The Obsidian King was not afraid of losing power. He was afraid of becoming the kind of ruler who used power the same way others had used it against him. The next morning, the public hearing began. Representatives from multiple packs arrived. Frostvale came with Lord Everett Blackthorn leading their delegation. Clara expected anger. She expected accusations. But she noticed something else. Fear. They were not afraid of Damien. They were afraid of what the truth might reveal. Before the hearing started, Nyx suddenly stepped forward and looked toward the entrance. Damien followed the wolf's gaze. A familiar scent had entered the chamber. Someone from his own court had arrived. Someone who knew exactly how the Abyss ceremony had been changed. And they had come prepared to make Clara the villain one more time. The public hearing began with a silence that felt heavier than any accusation. Representatives from Frostvale, Obsidian, and several smaller packs filled the grand chamber. Every seat was occupied. Every whisper carried. Clara Whitmore stood beside Damien Veilcrest, not behind him. That small decision alone told everyone something had changed. The Omega who had once been sent away as a burden was now standing beside the most powerful Alpha in the north. Lord Everett Blackthorn entered with the Frostvale delegation, wearing the same calm expression he had worn when he sent Clara toward the Abyss. But this time, she saw something different. He was not confident. He was worried. The hearing began with the usual words about tradition, responsibility, and pack stability. Clara listened carefully. She had learned that powerful people often hid their intentions behind beautiful language. The Frostvale pack only followed ancient law, Lord Blackthorn said. The Omega was selected because the ceremony required it. Damien's eyes narrowed slightly. You are calling a decision made without consent a law. The elder remained composed. Your Majesty, emotions cannot replace centuries of tradition. Clara stepped forward before Damien could answer. The entire room turned toward her. Neither can tradition replace truth. A few members of the council looked surprised. They expected Damien to speak for her. They did not expect Clara to speak for herself. I was told I was chosen because I was the only one who could protect the pack, she continued. But nobody asked why I was the only one. Nobody investigated the ceremony. Nobody questioned why the records were changed. Lord Blackthorn's expression hardened. You are an Omega healer. You do not understand the responsibilities of leadership. The room became quiet. Clara felt the old wound inside her reopen. The same words. The same assumption. That because she was an Omega, her voice mattered less. Before she could respond, Damien spoke. That is exactly the mistake people make when they underestimate her. His voice was calm, but everyone heard the authority behind it. You saw an Omega. I saw someone who discovered a truth your entire council ignored. The bond between them stirred. Not because Damien was protecting her. Because he respected her. That difference mattered. Then the unexpected happened. A member of the Obsidian court stepped forward. His name was Chancellor Adrian Crowell, one of Damien's oldest advisors. Clara recognized the symbol on his robe. The same symbol from the Altered Abyss document. Your Majesty, Adrian said. Perhaps we should discuss the fact that Clara Whitmore was not the original target. The chamber changed instantly. Damien looked at him carefully. Explain. Adrian placed a sealed record on the table. The ceremony was changed 15 years ago. The purpose was never to sacrifice an Omega. The purpose was to find someone with a rare Moonveil ability capable of restoring balance between packs. Clara felt her heart stop for a moment. Then why was I sent there? Adrian looked down. Because someone wanted the ability removed before anyone discovered what you could become. A wave of whispers moved through the chamber. Clara looked at Damien. For the first time, she saw something she had not seen before. Fear. Not fear for himself. Fear of what would happen if he failed to protect her now. But before Damien could respond, the chamber doors opened. A messenger rushed in carrying urgent news. The Frostvale border had changed. Several pack leaders who supported Clara had disappeared from the council. Someone was turning the packs against each other. Damien looked at Clara. This was never just about you. Clara nodded slowly. She understood now. The abyss was only the beginning. The real battle was over who would control the future of every pack in the north. The news from the northern border changed the atmosphere of the hearing completely. Minutes earlier, the chamber had been focused on the truth behind the altered abyss ceremony. Now everyone understood something much larger was happening. Someone was not only trying to destroy Clara Whitmore's reputation. Someone was trying to divide the packs before anyone could stop them. Damien Veilcrest stood at the center of the chamber, reading the latest report with a calm expression that fooled almost everyone. Clara noticed the difference. She had learned his small signs. The way his hand tightened around a document. The way his eyes became colder when he was trying not to show concern. Several Frostvale representatives have disappeared from their positions, Damien said. Their families received messages claiming the Obsidian Kingdom is preparing to take control of their territory. A wave of anger moved through the room. Fear was spreading faster than facts. Lord Blackthorn immediately stepped forward. You see what happens when outsiders interfere with pack traditions. This chaos began the moment you removed Clara from Frostvale. Clara looked at him carefully. Even now, he was trying to turn the truth into another weapon. Before Damien could respond, Clara spoke. No. The chaos began when someone convinced an entire pack that sacrificing an innocent person was acceptable. The room became silent. Lord Blackthorn looked at her. You think you understand leadership because the king stands beside you? Clara shook her head. No. I understand leadership because I know what it means to care for people who have no power. Damien looked at her, and for a moment, the entire room disappeared. He had spent years surrounded by advisors who talked about numbers, borders, and strategies. Clara talked about people. That was why she was dangerous to those who ruled through fear. Adrian Crowell stepped forward with another piece of information. There is more. The person who changed the Abyss records had access to both Frostvale and Obsidian archives. Damien's expression hardened. Someone connected to both kingdoms. Clara thought back to the symbol she found. The hidden mark. The forgotten name. Suddenly, something became clear. The person behind this did not want me gone because I was weak, she said. They wanted me gone because they knew I could expose them. Damien turned toward her. You think your ability is the reason they targeted you? Clara nodded. My ability lets me sense the truth left behind in objects. Records. Personal items. Old agreements. If someone changed history, I can find the evidence. The room went quiet again. Damien understood immediately. Clara was not a victim in this conflict. She was the one person who could uncover everything. But that also made her the biggest target. Later that evening, Damien found Clara alone in the archive, surrounded by old documents. You should rest, he said. Clara looked up. You should too. A small smile appeared on his face. I am the king. Rest is complicated. That sounds like something people say when they forget they are human. Damien looked at her for a long moment. You always do that. Do what? Remind me. The quiet between them felt different now. The mate bond was still there, but it was no longer only instinct. It was trust growing piece by piece. Then Nick suddenly lifted his head. The wolf moved toward a hidden shelf in the archive. Clara followed. Behind an old collection of records, they found a sealed letter carrying the same symbol. Damien opened it carefully. Inside was a message written years ago. A message that revealed the person who started the entire plan was not from Frostvale. It was someone much closer to the Obsidian throne. Clara looked at Damien. Someone wanted you to fail. Damien stared at the letter. His voice was quiet. No, he folded the paper slowly. Someone wanted me to become exactly the kind of king they could control. For the first time, Clara saw the true danger ahead. The enemy was not outside the kingdom. It had been standing beside the throne all along. The letter hidden inside the archive was only a few pages long, but Clara Whitmore knew immediately that it carried the weight of years of deception. The ink was faded. The paper was old, but the emotions attached to it were clear. Fear, ambition, and the belief that controlling the future was more important than protecting people. Damien Veilcrest read the letter silently beside her. For the first time since Clara had met him, the Obsidian King looked completely still. Not calm, not controlled. Still. Damien, Clara said softly. You know who wrote this. He did not answer right away. Then he placed the letter on the table. My former royal advisor. Clara looked at him carefully. Someone you trusted. Damien nodded once. Someone who helped build this kingdom after my father's reign. The disappointment in his voice was quieter than anger, but it carried more weight. The person behind the betrayal was not a stranger. It was someone who had stood beside the throne, someone who knew exactly how much trust the kingdom depended on. The next morning, Damien called the full council together. There were no secrets left to hide. No private conversations. No decisions made behind closed doors. Clara stood beside him as the evidence was presented. The altered abyss records. The hidden symbol. The false reports sent between packs. The attempt to turn Frostvale against Obsidian. One by one, the lies began to fall apart. When the former advisor was confronted, he did not deny what he had done. You think kindness makes a strong king? He asked Damien. You think choosing one Omega over tradition will unite these packs? Damien looked at him calmly. No, I think protecting innocent people is the first responsibility of any leader. The advisor shook his head. Power does not work that way. Damien stepped forward. That is why you should never have been trusted with it. The council remained silent, because everyone understood the difference. A ruler could demand loyalty through fear, but a true leader earned it through responsibility. After the hearing ended, Clara walked through the quiet castle gardens. The conflict was over, but she knew things would not change overnight. Trust between packs would take time. Old beliefs would not disappear because of one decision. Damien joined her beneath the evening sky. For once, he was not surrounded by guards, advisors, or expectations. Just Damien. You know, Clara said, a lot of people will still see me as the Omega who changed everything. Damien looked at her. They should see you as the Omega who reminded everyone what everything was supposed to mean. Clara smiled slightly. That sounds like something a king would say. Maybe. He looked toward the castle walls. But I learned it from someone who never had a throne. The mate bond between them was still there. Strong. Quiet. Real. But Clara understood something important. She had not become valuable because an alpha king chose her. She had been valuable before anyone recognized it. And Damien had not become a better king because fate connected them. He became better because he finally understood that power without compassion was only control. Months later, when Clara stood beside Damien during the first gathering of the United Northern Packs, she remembered the night Frostvale abandoned her. She remembered standing alone while everyone looked away. But she also remembered the moment someone finally looked at her and saw the truth. Not a sacrifice, not a weakness, not a forgotten Omega. A person, a healer, a leader, a queen chosen not because she needed a crown, but because she had always carried the strength to deserve one. And beside her stood the Obsidian King, no longer a ruler hiding behind a title, but an alpha who understood that the greatest power was not forcing others to follow. It was giving them a reason to believe.